The courtroom was silent, yet heavy, like the air before a storm. All eyes followed her as two officers escorted her to the front. Shackled wrists glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights, but her posture never broke. She walked like a soldier who had already faced death and refused to bow to fear. She wasn't just any soldier, she was a Navy SEAL sniper, one of the best. But now she stood accused, with chains rattling where medals once had. Already, the crowd sensed this wasn't an ordinary trial. And just as the whispers began to rise, the doors creaked open and an admiral stepped inside. His very presence turning the room to stone. Everyone froze. Judges, jurors, spectators, the air seemed to stop moving. The admiral's gaze locked onto the woman, and something unspoken passed between them. The officers who had handcuffed her shifted uneasily, suddenly aware that this was no ordinary prisoner. She didn't look like a criminal. She looked like a soldier who had given too much and, perhaps, been betrayed by the very system she swore to protect. The admiral's boots echoed against the wooden floor with a rhythm that demanded silence. And in that silence the question burned, what story lay behind those chains? Her name was Commander Rachel Stone. To the outside world she was a decorated sniper, credited with missions so classified that even her own family never knew the full truth. To those who served beside her, she was a protector, someone who never missed a shot and never left a man behind. But today she was branded as reckless, accused of defying orders during a mission overseas that cost lives. The prosecution painted her as dangerous, impulsive, unfit for the uniform she wore. Yet, as she stood tall with handcuffs biting into her skin, her eyes carried no shame. They carried memories, faces of soldiers she had fought to save, choices that could never be explained in legal language. And the admiral knew those choices all too well, because on that night, far from home, the mission was collapsing. The team was cornered. Intel had been wrong. A trap had been set. Stone had a decision: obey the order to reach leaving civilians behind, or stand and fight to give them a chance to live. She chose to fight. Every round she fired wasn't just a bullet, it was a promise, a desperate act to hold off an advancing enemy. By dawn, lives had been spared, but the cost? Heavy casualties. And when reports reached command, the black and white lines of military protocol erased the gray truth of battlefield chaos. To them, she had disobeyed. To her, she had chosen humanity. The courtroom replayed this conflict with icy precision. Lawyers argued, witnesses testified. Words like dereliction and insubordination echoed like shots fired at her honor. Yet behind every accusation, the admiral's silence grew louder. He had been the commander of the mission. He knew what had really happened, and still he said nothing. Until now, he rose, his uniform a silent reminder of authority carved from decades of service. His voice broke the tension like thunder. "This woman you see in chains," he said, pointing toward her, "did something most of us never have the courage to do. She placed her honor below her humanity. She broke orders not out of arrogance, but out of sacrifice." The jurors leaned in, hearts pounding. The admiral's voice softened, weighted with memory. "I was there. I saw the choice she made. And because of that choice, I am alive. Others are alive. Children who would have been slaughtered are alive. And yet we put her in chains." His words hung in the air, impossible to ignore. The courtroom was no longer just a place of judgment, it was a battlefield of truth. The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably, papers trembling in his hand. The jury whispered among themselves. And Rachel, for the first time, lowered her eyes, not out of shame, but because the weight of another's defense felt heavier than any chain. The admiral's voice grew quiet, almost a whisper. "Sometimes the law punishes what the heart knows is right. But if we cannot honor sacrifice, then we do not deserve those who give it." Tears filled the eyes of one juror. Another clenched his jaw, refusing to blink. The judge, normally expressionless, leaned forward, struggling to keep the mask of neutrality. And Rachel stood motionless, her heart pounding like the recoil of her rifle, unsure if the world would finally see her as she truly was: not a criminal, not a rebel, but a soldier who gave everything. The silence stretched, unbearable. Then the judge's gavel struck once, sharp and final. "This court," he said slowly, his voice unsteady, "finds Commander Rachel Stone not guilty." The words crashed through the room like a breaking wave. Gasps, cries, even applause quickly silenced. The chains were removed, the cold metal falling away, and for the first time her wrists were free. But freedom didn't feel like triumph, it felt like survival. Rachel turned to the Admiral. Their eyes met, not with smiles but with an unspoken bond carved from sacrifice. He had carried her truth when she could not. She had carried the burden when no one else would. In that glance was everything: gratitude, sorrow, and the knowledge that both of them would carry the ghosts of that night forever. She walked out of the courtroom into the daylight, the air fresh and sharp against her skin. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but she didn't stop. For once she wasn't a sniper, a soldier, or even a defendant. She was simply human, carrying scars the world would never see. And somewhere behind her the Admiral watched with pride and pain, knowing that the story of her chains would never truly end, but at least, for today, justice had remembered sacrifice, and so the question remained, lingering in every heart that had witnessed it: when rules clash with humanity, who truly deserves to wear the chains?